¿Qué tal, comunidad? Aquí habla su abogado Rey Ibarra Maldonado. Feliz jueves. Ya llegamos casi al fin de la semana y tenemos una invitada especial hoy, pero primero vamos a hacerlo en inglés. All right, folks, we're doing it first in English. I almost just forgot. I just started rambling in Spanish and I was about to keep going on. We're going first in English. We have a very special guest today. I've gotten a lot of phone calls, messages, people saying, Ray, what's going on with the COVID-19 inside of our jails, inside our detention centers, inside our prisons? What are people doing? How are people organizing? How can we get involved? And so we've reached out to someone that's directly involved, that is working on this issue, to get their insight as to what's happening. And as always, please do me a favor, give us a like, give us a share, so that folks who are interested in learning more about this issue can hear directly from those involved in the organizing. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in with us here for the evening, Astrid Pizarro. Astrid, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate having you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Great. So we're going at it again, Astrid. And if you can just give us a little bit of background on who Astrid is herself before we get into the work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned my name is Astrid. I was born in Mexico, and me and my family migrated here to the United States when I was pretty young. We moved all over Phoenix, and I studied at Arizona State University. I got a dual major in psychology and criminal justice. And I really began organizing during my college years as a means of survival and fighting back against the many injustices me, my family, and my community faced and were facing. And me and my family experienced the violence of deportation and the criminal justice system. And so that's when I decided to focus a lot of my organizing work around disrupting the deportation machine and the criminal justice machine, and really trying to put those two pieces together and see them as one entity. And that's why I started working with Mass Liberation, because we work towards that disruption. Our main purpose for Mass Lib is to end mass incarceration here in Arizona while making sure that we're having folks that are directly impacted lead the work, like myself.
Wonderful. So first off, I have to say I'm a proud Sun Devil alumni as well, to hear you talk passionately about using your experiences growing up in the area, personal experience with deportation, to go on, get your higher education, and to continue to work on this issue. Much respect and props to you for making that decision and working in this area. What is it right now with Mass Liberation? Are there certain projects or campaigns that you're focusing on right now?
So right now we really focus our efforts with COVID-19 and around prisons, jails, and detention centers. We do other work like direct resources, policy, direct action, activism. But right now we're making sure we focus all our efforts on COVID-19 surrounding the jails, prisons, and detention centers.
Awesome. And is there one certain, and maybe we just go a little bit prison or jail education 100. What's the difference between a prison, a jail, and a detention center, if you could?
Yeah, so detention centers are where the immigration folks there are held there, whether they're waiting for their deportation or they're just based on their status as citizens. And then jails are folks that serve less than a year behind cages, and prisons are more of a lengthy sentence. And a lot of the times folks that are in jail, they haven't even been convicted of a crime, and they still are behind cages for long periods of time, just because the way that the system works, that is keeping all these folks behind there, regardless if they have been convicted of a crime or not.
And I know you're quoted in the media a lot. You do a lot of direct action, a lot of organizing. You guys did a campaign on cash bail as well, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we did some work around just ending the cash bail system. We didn't do the direct work there. We kind of just supported it. There's other organizations that's really the direct work that they do. We did do a Mother's Day bailout where we kind of raised money to bail out a mother in time for Mother's Day.
Nice.
But it's just a matter of another injustice within the system and breaking that chain there.
And if you can tell our audiences, why is cash bail system wrong? What's wrong with that?
So it's a matter of you're put behind bars basically determined of how much money you have. And a lot of the times, the folks that are unfairly targeted by the criminal justice system are poor folks that cannot afford bail for their release to be with their loved ones, whether their loved ones need them to take care of them, they need to go to work, or simply just having their freedom. And it disproportionately affects poor folks when it comes to the cash bail system.
Yeah, and I've been in court sometimes. Sometimes we got to go to a criminal court initial appearance in the middle of the night, 10 at night, 3 in the morning there at 4th Avenue Jail. And I've seen people go up in front of the judge and the judge say, you have a $100 bond, right? And the person is obviously, because they told the judge they don't have a home, they're homeless. And it's like, well, how can a homeless person come up with $100 to pay a bond? To them, it's like this insurmountable amount of money, and it's all done in the cover of darkness, right? The entire state of Arizona is asleep, and here you have somebody going up there that, has a very minor accusation against them, and the judge says you have a $100 bond, and they're just unable to pay it, so they have to stay detained for who knows, could be weeks before maybe even months before they resolve their case, all because they don't have that $100 cash. So I applaud you guys for making the inroads to fight against that here in the state of Arizona, because it's really a travesty, the amount of people who are stuck behind bars simply because they can't come up with a little bit of money to pay.
Exactly.
And now you're working on the COVID-19. Is there a specific jail, detention center, prison that you guys are targeting right now with a certain campaign?
So we're not targeting any specific jail or prison. Right now we have a petition going out for COVID-19 that demands all those empowered to do something about through all cages within Arizona, detention centers, jails, prisons, juvenile centers, to really take a stand and do what's right to make sure that our folks inside there are being taken care of, and also making sure that we can get as much folks outside of these jails, prisons, detention centers as an overall public health issue, because as we know, it's very cramped in there, and if we continue to have folks in there while COVID-19 is happening, many folks are going to die.
So you say there's an action item here, and what you said at the very end there, I mean, that like a dagger through the heart right there. You're saying folks who are incarcerated, they're doing their time or waiting for their trial or waiting for their immigration court hearing, they could die because of the inaction from the state in terms of dealing with COVID-19. And you did provide a remedy for folks. Awesome. I really appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, if you can comment down below if you're going to sign the petition. And I know we got Lerman there behind the scenes. Lerman, if you can post a link to that petition so folks could sign it. I know we got my man Thomas Lee here. I'm sure he's going to go over there and sign that. Thanks for joining us, Big T Lee. Got George. Yep, pauper jail. This is just awful. George agrees with you on the cash bail system. And now, George, hope you can go over there and sign that. George probably already has. He's on top of the ball. But if you could forward that as well, ladies and gentlemen, to anybody so that they can sign it. And who's that directed to? Is that directed to Ducey or the prisons? Who are we sending that to?
So it's directed to the governor, Adele, Alistair, and the Departments of Corrections Office, and a couple other folks in power. And if you go to the petition, it'll tell you exactly who we are directing. But it's anybody that has the power and control to do something about incarceration here in Arizona.
Wonderful. And do you know anything about, is there any COVID-19 cases that have come up in any of these places? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so there has actually already been 2 deaths here in Arizona of folks that were incarcerated that got COVID-19 and they died. and there has already been around 30 to 40 cases of folks inside cages that have COVID. And that's needless to say that isn't even the DOC having full transparency of staff, of inmates having contracted this virus. And that's one of our demands here in the petition, is requiring DOC to have transparency of who exactly and how much folks are getting COVID-19, so it can be an alarm to the public of this needs to take action now.
So they're not even giving us the actual numbers of people they're testing or people who have been infected?
No.
And 2 people have already passed away who were incarcerated. That's pathetic. I mean, to think of the inaction on the federal level and the lack of time that it took for people who weren't incarcerated to get some sort of direction on what we should and shouldn't be doing. And now that we know about it, and I mean, these prisons and jails and detention centers, they must be ripe for the spread of the virus. I mean, I've been inside the vast majority of them here in the state of Arizona, and there's nobody 6 feet apart really at any point in time while you're incarcerated. And people are essentially sleeping on top of each other and gathered in the same small rooms. It just seems to me that if one person gets infected, that's going to keep spreading to everybody else that's there. It's ridiculous. Sorry to get worked up, but what else? What other demands do you guys have in this letter here?
So we have a couple. So it's the release of vulnerable people, whether that's the elderly. It's kind of unclear of folks that have underlying conditions that would put them more at risk of COVID-19, but just making sure we release those vulnerable folks. Also, creating safe conditions of confinement. As you mentioned, prisons, they don't have that. It is very cramped in there. They don't even have proper hygiene, as in soap, hand sanitizer, even masks for the inmates there. And also quality healthcare. We all know that inside prisons, jails, there isn't a quality healthcare. They don't have doctors on site. They're medical assistants that aren't trained to be able to diagnose someone to have COVID-19, and they have the right to have that quality of healthcare, and just also access to sufficient and affordable services there.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the reality here. Let's go with the immigration detention centers, right? These are run by private corporations. CoreCivic, formerly CCA, their whole idea of incarcerating and caging people has nothing to do with safety, nothing to do with health. It has everything to do with making a profit, right? All they're trying to do is the more people that they get in their detention center, the more money they make for their shareholders, the less money they spend on doctors, on equipment for safety, the more money, again, they put in their pocket. So they have no financial incentive which is their only incentive, to make sure people are safe and healthy. It's absolutely ridiculous. Would the 2 people that passed away, were they in an immigration detention center or a prison, jail? Do you know?
They were in prisons, I believe.
Wow. Oh. And we got a question here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, put it into perspective, there's 1,500 ICU beds currently in Arizona, and there's over 40,000 people incarcerated in Arizona. And the cases here in Arizona that don't include incarcerated folks is around 5,000. So, like the ARE shows, we as a state don't have the resources to support COVID-19, let alone letting folks inside cages continue to contract it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's clear that this is a huge problem that I haven't seen much about in the media, so thank you so much for working on it. We do have a question here. Are there any states that have successfully released any prisoners, inmates, etc., due to the virus? You know, any other states or any other local governments that have done more than what Arizona has?
So the last time I checked, California has. They have been releasing people to fight the high population side incarceration, but other than that, I haven't heard of other places. But on the flip side, there was an Ohio prison that 75% of the population inside prison contracted COVID-19 overnight.
75% of the, holy cow, that's ridiculous.
those already being cases inside Arizona prisons, you can only imagine what number of cases they are right now, but we just don't know because there's no transparency.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point that you made at the very beginning. They refuse to give us the accurate numbers, and how can we assess what the actual problem is? It seems like an extremely inept system that is just ripe for public health pandemic within the COVID-19 crisis. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, when an individual in a prison, a detention center, a jail gets severely sick, where are they going to go? They don't have special hospitals just for people that are incarcerated. They're going to send them to the same hospital that someone who's out of custody is going to go to. And as was said, if there's a minimum number of beds, but we have this population here that's going to more likely contract it, as the example was given just now, we're setting ourselves up to have all these beds being used by people who are in jails, prisons, and detention centers right now. It's ridiculous. And Astrid, I've been to some detention centers here where they have part contracts with the ICE, part contracts with marshals, part contracts with other states. So we're actually incarcerating people who were sentenced for crimes in other states, and now, because we're prison industrial complex state, we run the risk of being further harmed in our general public by not doing anything within the prisons and jails. Did you happen to see an op-ed that was written by, I think it was a Maricopa County attorney? Did you take a look at that at all?
I have not taken a look at that, no.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet either. I just saw the title, and it said, the title pissed me off to the point where I said, I'm not even going to read this. It said, like, activists exploiting pandemic to get people released. And to me, it's just like, yeah, come on. What kind of joke is that? I saw the title, and I said, forget about it. I'm not even going to give you the 10 minutes of my day to read your ridiculous argument. But we do have that huge problem going on in the community. And I've seen some folks go out and do drives around prisons or detention centers. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so it's as a form of solidarity, individuals of our folks in there right now, our families in there, and also, like I mentioned, the folks that passed from COVID-19 while they were incarcerated. So that's kind of our part in just making sure that we hear them, we see them while we're trying to get these demands pushed through.
Awesome. And I've heard some great things about that. People have been telling me that people inside the jails or the prisons have been noticing that the activists are out there. Do you know of any more that are coming up anytime in the near future?
If you would like to see, you can go on our Facebook page. We post all the events that we're going to have. We also have our petition there. We also have a fundraiser there for the COVID-19 relief.
Nice.
On our pages, you can be updated on everything.
Wonderful. So you guys are at Mass Lib on Facebook?
So we're Mass Liberation AZ on Facebook, and then Mass Lib AZ on Instagram.
All right. So we'll drop those down below in the comments as well. Do us a huge favor, folks. Go over and like those pages. Follow them on Instagram so you can keep up to date with the latest calls for action, be it protest, marches, letters, calls. And again, Astrid, thank you so much for working and focusing on this issue and being that person who's willing to stand up and say, I am going to fight for those that are incarcerated. I'm going to fight for those that are dehumanized and work side by side to get them released. Anything else that you think the community should learn or know about this issue?
Just keep fighting for the folks in there. They have already been stripped away of their rights and their freedoms, and it's our responsibility as a community to fight for them. Like I mentioned below, if you sign up with us and you follow our pages, if you can get involved, if you can donate, if you can't get involved, donate. Please share stuff, share the petition. All that really helps towards the efforts that we're trying to do.
Awesome. Astrid, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Again, admire your work. Keep it up. Thank you for representing. Long live the Sun Devils and the work in the criminal immigration area. Something that we care deeply about at the office. If there's anything we can do, we have criminal attorneys, we have deportation defense attorneys. You guys have any questions or anything, please reach out to us, and we'd love to support your work.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.